The Divine Envelope, the full story. Trump meets them at the Bush Sr. funeral. The story began as a message that no one could decipher, a coded message, a metaphor for the ages. The intelligence community posted the strange message on the World Wide Web. It looked like nonsense, a garbled mess. Dash, dash, days, dash, numbered, dash, weighed, dash, divided, dash, found, dash, wanting, dash. No one could make heads or tails of it. And then an anonymous code breaker named Daniel. His answer came in at midnight that caught their attention. His translation went as follows: The days have been numbered. You have been weighed and found wanting, divided and given to, dash. Was it a myth or a fairy tale or just a metaphor? As an independent observer, I saw this amazing blood-pumping interest in the mysterious envelope, and I couldn't help but think it didn't even matter what was in the envelope. The miracle of this moment is the perceived notion that the criminals were put on notice. I can't think of another time in modern American history where the heads of state were put on notice. Does it even matter if it was real or just an illusion? No, it does not matter. That was my whole point in this series of conversations on the mysterious, divine envelope. To me, it was about the moment in time that the American people woke up to a grand conspiracy that was being played out right under their noses for 100 years. And a simple envelope was the straw that broke the camel's back. So, does it really matter that if in a few days Laura Bush or Joe Biden comes out and says, the divine envelope was only a tithing offering by a greedy church operator asking for money at an inappropriate time? Or if they say it was merely an invitation for the girls' night out or a wedding party, does it really matter what they say? No. I am here to say it does not matter what was in the envelope or even what they have to say. Because to the American people, the divine envelope has become a metaphor. And all the cameras were in place. Many cameras in the perfect position. The actors on cue performed brilliantly. But as the master Orson Welles would say, no matter how good the actors, no matter how good the cameraman, you still need a divine accident. I will call it the divine envelope that got the blood pumping in the American people's psyche. So I was wondering, was there anything that I left out? Was there anything I overlooked in this divine envelope saga that I could add into this introduction? And sure enough, there was plenty. So I would like to add on some of the things I overlooked. I left out any commentary on Jimmy Carter because I believe deep in his heart he meant well for America. Was he played on the Middle East strategy? Surely. Deep state handlers are everywhere, and Jimmy was no match for them. Yes, he did steal the show by looking for his envelope that he never got. Hilarious indeed. But Jimmy Carter should be lucky that he did not get the envelope, because the people who got the envelope have been weighed and found wanting. I did not dive into any lip reading of the suspects because my lip reading skills are weak, and finding someone you can trust in that art form could take months. But really, do their silly words mean anything to me? No. Actually, hell no. Whatever they say means nothing to me. Their body language, their eyes, their hands, their feet, and even their nostrils. This is what we focus on. But more on body language later. Now, I cannot confirm this, but I have to throw it out there for confirmation in the comments. I hear not one of the Kennedy clan attended the funeral. This is what I hear. Not one of the Kennedy family attended the funeral. I need to research that further, and if one really did show up, I would be disappointed. It is strange, but when you look at the weird haircut of the soldier who took Donald Trump's coat, I mean, it's strange, and people pointed this out to me, but it does strangely look like a Q, and that was weird. A stretch of the imagination? Maybe. I never got into blackmail type photos that are on file for most of these people in positions of power, and how that could play into the contents of the mysterious envelopes, because for that you need concrete proof. But many people have said it could easily be a photograph because their reactions were so quick. I should have put more emphasis on Laura Bush because she was so upset. But I kind of like Laura, and I couldn't go there. Now, my opinion is that Trump left the service early because of Secret Service and security protocol on getting the presidential caravan out first before the crowd formed outside. But Donald Trump did leave the service early. Now, Obama's arms crossed over his lap and his nose up. Well, that's a whole body language video in and of itself. That would be another 10 minutes. That would be for another day. Something else I overlooked was Bush Jr. in a sedated, frozen-like mode with Secret Service men keeping a close eye on him. That tells us that Laura Bush is aware of his condition. And well, that is his father in the casket, or supposedly, and a strong wind could knock Junior off his feet in his vulnerable emotional state. Simply put, medicated. In hindsight, most people think the envelope contained a photo or a big black Q or indictments. Most people think that Dan Quayle has not aged well, and I can only say for that, wait till you're 60 or 65 and then say that. I mean, come on. Sometimes the comments are ridiculous. VP Pence stopping to chat it up with the criminal Hillary definitely needed more attention, but hell, we all know that the Koch brothers own VP Pence. So there's no reason to waste too much time on that. An interesting afterthought is it's possible that every envelope held a different message personally associated with the recipient and their past crimes. Okay, so this is something that we kind of overlooked. That again, it's possible that every envelope held a different message or a different photograph, the personal touch. And I guess I should point this out. A lot of people were confused and they did not see Al Gore there. If you look up in the right corner there. That is Al Gore. Al Gore. And apparently, if you see the red arrow there, apparently Al Gore got an envelope too. Now, it's kind of a bad picture, but that is Al Gore behind Mrs. Carter. Now, of all the things we overlooked, last but surely not least was Slick Willie invading Michelle Obama's space and rubbing his damn elbow into her private parts. I mean, all I can say there is smooth operator. Yeah, he never gives up, does he? Slick Willie, he just can't help himself. So that's it for the introduction. At the end of the video, I add a few other comments. So onward to part one, a look at body language. Today we are going to be discussing body language. Our metaphor will be the poker table. Because believe me, there's nothing more stressful in life than losing money. First, we're going to watch as the Obamas and the Clintons are laughing and cackling and having a good time. They truly are. You got to realize that they are rich people. Rich people, they don't have to worry about money. So even though they're at a funeral, they are living a charmed life. They have Secret Service agents. They have mansions. They have everything they need. So in the game of poker, they are winners, even though they lost a big game recently. Well, it's been 2 years, actually, 2 years ago. Let's not forget that Hillary Clinton bet $1 billion. I believe it was the first time that any politician spent over $1 billion to win a race, or in this, like we say, win a poker game. And she lost. So that's pretty high stakes. I mean, the game doesn't get any higher than what we're looking at here. Now, obviously, these people are bankrolled by somebody else. We know they're bankrolled by the 666 gang leaders. So the $1 billion did not come out of Hillary's pocket. She will be set for life because Bill was the president. So it's not really what Hillary's ever done in her life. Hillary's absolutely done nothing in her life. She's riding on the coattails of Bill Clinton, who won a couple big poker games. And he was the president of the United States. And nobody can ever take that away from Bill Clinton. And he knows that. And that's why he's always got a smile on his face, Bill Clinton, no matter what he does. But let's try to stay on topic here, body language. I mean, what we're looking at here is 4 rich bastards laughing and cackling and having a good time. But this is before Donald Trump is entered the building. So this is one of the most telling parts of this body language exercise today. Here we are at the Bush Sr. funeral. And they're laughing and cackling, but only before Donald Trump has walked into the building. And once we see Donald Trump walk into the building, then the real stress begins in the poker game. Remember, nothing worse than losing money. Hillary Clinton lost $1 billion for her 666 backers. They lost a big one. Donald Trump upset them. And Donald Trump is entering the building. Okay, so the first thing we're going to get out of the way in our body language analysis is the side eye effect. I mean, these people are showing lots of disdain. They are disgusted. And look at Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle side-eyeing. Basically, there's the merchant of death in the back there. I mean, these people are side-eyeing Donald Trump from here to eternity. I mean, this is like a side-eyeing convention from hell, which is befitting because most good people in America believe that Bush Sr. is in hell right now. Oh, how I wish I had a visual of that. Pointy-nosed Bush kneeling down before the pointy-horned Satan himself. But again, this is body language analysis. Let's not get into some of our fantasies, wishing that we could see George Bush down there meeting Satan himself. We're not going to go there. Let's keep this official. Let's keep this as professional as possible. Okay, So now we got the Clinton. Look at Hillary Clinton side-eyeing. They're not laughing and cackling anymore, are they? And run the video back, and you'll see that Michelle Obama was doing a side-eye thing also. So, I mean, and then you got Bill Clinton. I mean, Bill Clinton's probably the only sick bastard here. I mean, he has this sick type of humor, and he's probably the only one who can see any humor in this. And what is the humor? What's Bill Clinton thinking in the back of his head? Yes, Donald Trump is kicking the tables over in the temple. And I don't think that this is not lost on Bill Clinton. I believe that Bill Clinton's already had his run. Bill Clinton's been the president. But I believe that Bill Clinton truly, deep down, he'll never tell anybody, but deep down, I believe Bill Clinton finds humor in Donald Trump coming in and kicking the tables over in the establishment, kicking the tables over in the temple, if you will. But that's my own opinion on Bill Clinton's hidden thoughts. He would never ever say that in public. So I think what the body language is telling us today, that Bill Clinton is not under any stress right here. And I don't believe that Donald Trump is under very much stress either. I think Donald Trump has come to terms with the brutality of this poker game. And as I said before, the stakes do not get much higher than the stakes of this poker game. So Donald Trump comes in, he hands his coat to the military guy. If you notice here, he does shake Obama's hand, and the Clintons are side-eyeing him as he sits down. But Donald Trump is very calm in this situation. I got to give it to him in this situation. He's very, very calm. I mean, everybody, he knows all the eyes are on him. And in the end, after shaking the hands of Obama's, Trump does look over at the Clintons. Let's talk about that for a second. What does this calm look tell us? This calm stare that Donald Trump is looking over at the Clintons, what does this tell us? Well, in my opinion, it tells us that Donald Trump has a little bit of confidence here that he's the president and he's holding some aces up his sleeve. You see, if Hillary Clinton had won, the game would have been over. But the game is still going on because Donald Trump won. He's holding a couple aces up his sleeves. And what that stare over there at the Clintons is telling me is Donald Trump is saying, hey, you can try to take me down, but if you take me down, I'm bringing you down with me. You see, this battle is still going on. I can't understand why Hillary Clinton and her backers are still trying to take Donald Trump down, because if they take Donald Trump down, Donald Trump could actually take them down. And this is, again, what's this, the third time I've already said it. This is a pretty high stakes poker game here. And that's why we're talking about the body language, because at this level of stress, some people can't take it. And now we're going to get back into poker, because I notice how their heads are up in the air. So remember, in poker, when you're weak, you try to act strong. And when you're strong, you try to act weak. This is a body language tell. Now you notice Obama's head is up. Hillary Clinton's head is up most of the time. She's bobbing her head. What does this tell me? Well, it tells me a lot, because I've seen this so much over almost playing poker for almost 40 years. I've seen this way too many times. I've actually done it myself. I've actually had my head in the position that you see Obama's head right there, in the position you see Hillary Clinton's head. I've been on the poker table, and I've had my head in that position. And I'll tell you what that head position means. Remember, we're talking high-stakes poker here. Hillary Clinton's already lost $1 billion. Hillary Clinton is going to have to try to stay strong for the rest of her life, even though she's weak. But let's get right down to it. What that means when your head is tilted up and you're looking up at the ceiling and you're in a poker game, what it means is that you're losing. You're losing big time. And what it normally means, there's 9 or 10 players there. And what it tells, most of the time, what it says is there's one guy at the table. One guy, and he's running over the table. He's winning every other hand. He has a mountain of chips in front of him, and everyone else at the table is buried. Believe me, unless you've been in this situation, you will not know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to try to give you a visual. Okay, you've got a table full of people. Now, when you lose a hand, you got to go back into your pocket and dig, and you dig, and you dig. And if you got one guy and he's winning all the pots, his chips are going to become a mountain, and you're going to keep on digging and digging and digging, which is a mistake. When you got one guy winning all the chips, the best thing to do is get up and walk away. Hillary Clinton could not do that. Most people cannot do that because they think that the guy who's winning all the money is a moron and an idiot. And lots of times he is. So imagine this. I'm going to try to give you a visual. You're at a table, and there's some good players at the table. You got to realize that Obama and Hillary and all these people, they think that they're good at what they do. She was the Secretary of State. Obama was the president. They think that they're the best poker players at the table. And when you had a guy like Donald Trump who sat down and won all the chips, they don't know what to think. That's why their head is looking up. They're lost. They have no idea what's happening here. They're looking up and they're trying to find something in their brain. How in the hell did this moron beat me? How is this idiot taking all my chips? And they keep on digging in their pocket. And that's what Hillary Clinton's doing. Instead of Hillary Clinton just retiring out there in some ranch and getting out of the spotlight, Hillary Clinton keeps on digging into her pocket, digging, digging, and digging. And I've seen this a million times on the poker table. Hillary Clinton will lose all her money trying to beat the guy at the table who cannot be beaten that night. Yes, Donald Trump may not be the best poker player. And Obama and Hillary actually think that Donald Trump is an idiot and a moron, and they can't take it that he's beating them. And that, like I said, I've seen this more times than I ever really want to remember. Because when I was a young person, and I was at the table, and I would see this guy. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he had no idea what he was doing, but he was winning all the chips. And you think, oh, I'm going to stay here and eventually get him. But that night, you're never going to get him. And that's what happens. The best thing to do is get up and walk away. We're not going to go into that. I'm not trying to teach you poker strategy here. We're talking about body language. And when you see somebody who has lost a lot of money, and who has the most to lose? If Donald Trump is successful, who has the most to lose? Obama. Obama has a lot to lose. His legacy is gone. Hillary Clinton cannot get up and walk out of the game. Hillary Clinton's still in the game, digging and digging and digging. And if Donald Trump wins, Hillary Clinton loses. So that's why their head is looking up. They're looking in that brain saying, how in the hell is this moron beating us? How did this idiot get all the chips in front of him? Again, if you don't play poker, you may not understand what I'm talking about. I've tried to give you the best visual I can, but trust me, I've seen this 1,000 times. So let me clarify. When I say the head's looking up slightly, we're talking about Obama and Hillary. Now look at the rest of the players in the game. I mean, the rest of the players like Dan Quayle and that guy there, the Merchant of Death, I mean, they don't really have a lot to lose in this game. They're just sitting there. You see, sometimes you got guys who sit at the table, and they don't really play any hand. They're just watching. And that's people like Dan Quayle and some of the other elites here in this game. They're not really putting much chips at stake. So the guys who are really mixing it up in this poker game are Donald Trump, Obama, and Hillary. So go back when you can go back and look at that picture when Donald Trump is there and they got their heads up and they're looking in their brain trying to say, how in the hell did this moron beat us? Compared to before Donald Trump got there. Look at their body language now before Donald Trump got there. This is night and day. This is a beautiful exercise in body language. We have these, what do I want to call them? Well, we'll just call them rich bastards to thank for this. And here they are in the public eye, and we get to analyze them because they are the actors in this poker game. Remember, they are actors. And that's what poker players are. In many ways, poker players are actors. Here they're getting the Academy Award for being happy. And then Donald Trump shows up and they just cannot control themselves. Remember, body language tells the truth. And there's something about Donald Trump that brings out a whole lot of stress in people. And when Donald Trump arrived, the truth came out. We saw it in their eyes, side-eyeing him. Look at Hillary Clinton nodding her head. Very stressful situation. Look at her nodding her. This is so stressful for Hillary Clinton because she lost $1 billion and she still think about this. You're in a high stakes poker game and you lost all your money one night. You might even have been drinking that night. You know how stressful it would be to go back into that poker room the next day and actually have to see those guys that took your money? I mean, trust me, you want to just go crawl into a hole. You might, and sometimes it is good to go keep a low profile. You lost all your money? You did something wrong? Go into a low profile. Try to figure out what you did wrong. That's what Hillary Clinton is not doing. Hillary Clinton is not going into low profile mode, retirement mode. Hillary Clinton keeps on digging into her pocket. And that's really what I enjoy the most about this poker game. Watching Hillary Clinton keep on losing and losing and losing. I think most of us enjoy watching Hillary Clinton lose. Okay, so we'll summarize, and I'll leave you with this. We've established Obama and Hillary Clinton's heads up. They're trying to act strong when they're actually weak. They're trying to look in their brain to figure out how this moron beat us. And then you notice that Hillary Clinton's head was rocking back and forth. Think Rain Man. Remember the movie Rain Man? And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to be able to tell you when people rock back and forth, it somehow makes their brain more calm, trying to reduce the stress. So we actually see Hillary Clinton nodding her head a lot, and this is her trying to reduce the stress levels. And of course, then you start getting into psychiatric doctor stuff, and we're not going to go there. But the bottom line is body language is telling us everything we want to know. There was so much drama and intrigue in our last body language conversation that a follow-up video is in order. This story would not be complete without digging deeper into their shocked facial expressions and to why they got caught flat-footed in this ring of combat. Think Catch-22 as we go further down this rabbit hole. You see, after further evaluation, it became clear to me that the actors in this drama are not the brightest stars in the sky. Quite frankly, I think their light bulbs are burnt out. So my conclusion is, and it always has been for that matter, is that we are watching a Catch-22 play out. And that will be my focus of today's conversation. As you know, we use poker as a metaphor in our last video to help us understand the players/actors. Game theory is a must in understanding the Machiavellian ways of the powers that lurk in the shadows. But what if? What if the game is unwinnable? What if the actors are in a Catch-22 theater play? What would their faces look like? But not only are the actors caught in a trap, but how about if America is caught in a Catch-22 trap with all our factories gone and the changing demographics? Is there any way out of this trap, or have we been weighed and found wanting? Well, anyhow, onward to the divine envelope. The Clinton-Bush mysterious envelope. And that's been all the rage on the internet. People speculating what was in the envelope and why did only a few get the envelope. I think Hillary Clinton got one, Biden got one, Al Gore, and even VP Pence got one. And then later on, Jeb Bush was horrified when Laura Bush showed him something. So that's why we have to dig further. What are these clowns up to? What were they shocked deceive. Well, like I said, I'm telling you that their house of cards is falling down, and they are in a situation where they don't know what to do. And why is that? It's because they've always had advisors and lobbyists telling them what to do and what to say. And think about who was the leader of their new world order. Old man Bush was the leader, one of the big honchos in this new world order. Think about it. Back when John F. Kennedy was taken out, that's when they had a complete and utter clamp on power. Old man Bush was in the CIA, and here he is. They're putting him in the ground, and all the actors are in shock. Look at the shock here. This is a telling part. We'll look at this. Look at Jeb Bush when he showed something. At this point, he looks pretty content. He even has a slight smile on his face. And then he has shown this, whatever that was, and the shock. Look at Laura Bush. Not only Jeb Bush, people may be missing that the air was taken out of Laura Bush's lungs. I mean, look at Laura Bush here. Look at her. Right here. Gasping for air. The air was knocked out of her. I don't know what they saw, but many people were intrigued and interested. And that's why we're talking about this. What was in the envelope? Why was Jeb Bush so shocked? And is it a coincidence that when all this was going down, that there's an investigation coming up on the Clinton Foundation? Some whistleblowers have come out. About the same time as this funeral was going on, whistleblowers were coming out with like 6,000 pages of documents exposing the Clinton Foundation. And if the Clinton Foundation goes down, a whole lot of people are going to go down. I'm here to tell you that yes, this house of cards is falling. They're in a catch-22 position. Doesn't matter what they do. And they have to think about, are we going to fight or are we going to flee? I say the only thing they can really do, the smart ones will flee. The smart ones, all the ones who were involved in this Ponzi scheme. And I have to leave Donald Trump out of this Ponzi scheme because, quite frankly, when the housing bubble was being built up, and after the housing bubble bust, and then they gave all that money to the banks, and then the banks manipulated the interest rates to zero, Donald Trump was not involved in any of that. So even though I got to leave Donald Trump out of the Ponzi scheme, because he was not a career politician. Matter of fact, that's why Donald Trump got elected, because he was not a career politician. People seem to keep on missing this. Donald Trump knocked out every career politician like dominoes. Not because Donald Trump was smarter than them. It's because Donald Trump was the only non-career politician in the bunch, and Americans are getting sick and tired of these career politicians who have put us in this situation. We are literally in a catch-22 position. And I'm here to tell you that the body language, this is not really a body language video. This is a commentary on why they're so shocked. What's the envelope about? What is this coded message telling them? And we really don't need to be body language experts to look at these people and say they're shocked. They don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know what to do, fight or flight. And what they're gonna you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna go back and talk to their advisors and the lobbyists. But the problem is that the bankers and the lobbyists also know that they're in an unwinnable situation. So this is going to be a very interesting 2 years coming up to the next election. Okay, so one last thing on Donald Trump before we go down that rabbit hole. And we are going down the rabbit hole today. Trust me, be patient. But Donald Trump, like I said, he was not there when they were building up the House of Cards in the swamp in Washington, D.C., the Beltway. When they were putting this Ponzi scheme together, Donald Trump was not one of the engineers. But he's there now, and he's not stupid. And Donald Trump knows that if they keep on raising the interest rates, everything's going to fall down that much quicker. And like Donald Trump, like them, he doesn't want to be in the Oval Office. He does not want to be in Washington, D.C. when the whole house of cards comes falling down. So in that respect, he's not stupid. He's like them. He understands that the Federal Reserve is holding all the cards. The Federal Reserve, the banking cartel, is the dealer. And as you know, they've been manipulating the deck for a long time, manipulating the interest rates down. Like I say, we're at a rigged poker game. But today, like I said, we're not going to be going into body language, or we're not going to go into the poker metaphor. We're going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to tell you why they were so shocked to see the envelope. So let's do it. Okay? Before we crawl down this hole, I want you to think about your neighborhoods, how your neighborhoods have changed since before George Bush and Obama were in office. So as I tell you this story, just remember, or just think about how your neighborhoods have changed. Okay, so after the Obama-Hillary regime, they were bringing in enemy combatants to the country at an alarming rate. And the military intelligence agency became very concerned, to say the least. They had already had to pucker up after China got our ICBM technology. That would be back in the Clinton years, which will lead us to the Clinton Foundation. So there's a lot of dots here. As we go down this rabbit hole, I'm going to skim over a lot of dots. It's going to be your responsibility to connect these dots. And it's going to be your responsibility to follow the money to the banking cartel. But make no mistake about it, all roads lead back to 1913 in the Federal Reserve Act. All roads lead back to John F. Kennedy. All roads lead back to that critical moment when George Bush was being told what to do by the merchant of death, Dick Cheney. We didn't have enough time to go over the Cheney stare in the last video. And I don't have enough time to go into the merchant of death now, but just look at that stare he's giving Donald Trump. He's staring Trump down. Like I said, he's the merchant of death. And I cannot underestimate his role in this house of cards, because he was telling George Bush what to do, and George Bush took us down that road that changed everything. But since we are limited in time, we must stick to the current events. What is the conversation today? The story is about the envelope, the mysterious envelope. It's nothing more than a metaphor. So many metaphors in this theater that we are watching. Remember, they are all actors. And the people in charge cannot really tell the Americans what's going down, because it would literally scare them half to death. So there has to be metaphors out there. This envelope was a coded message. Who's the only group that can send out a coded message to such powerful people at such a high-profile event? Well, that would only be the 666 gang in the military security complex. So yes, the envelope was a coded message. It is my job to lead you in the right direction to understanding this metaphor. So let's not forget what I just said about the military intelligence agency. They became very concerned about what was happening during the Obama-Hillary regime. They'd also become very, very concerned what happened in the Clinton regime when it came down to China growing in power, our ICBM missile technology, and the Clinton Foundation getting so rich? I mean, are the dots starting to appear? Are you starting to connect the dots? So let's ask ourselves a few rudimentary questions. Do you think it was a coincidence that General Flynn ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then he was placed in the new Trump regime? Ask yourself, was that a coincidence? Do you think it was a coincidence that China grew as a major world power and the Clinton Foundation got richer and richer and richer? Do you think that was a coincidence? Do you think it was a coincidence that the nation's security industrial complex gets bigger and bigger and richer, and more suspicious foreign nationals are flooding into the country at the same time? Do you have a gut feeling that this discredited cabal is feeding us horseshit and lies 24/7? You have to ask yourself these questions before we can go any further. Do you feel like the Washington, D.C. swamp is getting richer and richer, and the long gone middle class that you and I were once part of is getting poorer and poorer? And do you think it's a coincidence that General Flynn will get no jail time in this witch hunt that's going on? So these are the things that are just popping up. At the same time these envelopes were passed out, it's announced that General Flynn will get no jail time. Okay? And it's also announced that there are 6,000 pages of documents that some Clinton Foundation whistleblowers have just came out. This is all coming out on the same day, right around the same time these envelopes came out. The pieces of the puzzle, I hope, are coming together. One final question. What agency has the power to ensure that a cheating Hillary Clinton who rigged the primaries to beat old man Bernie could not and would not win the big one? Who has that kind of power? I tell you, the message was encoded. And after the ceremony, was there a military attaché who would have to explain the context of the message? None of this is of public record. Are we talking about a private invitation to a national security briefing on the Clinton Foundation investigation and General Flynn gets no jail time, basically the exposing of the Clinton Foundation, and does it have national security implications? Hell yeah, it does! I'm talking about the house of cards is falling and damage control is in order. Yes, damage control is really, really in order here. But not to get too far off the subject, is that crippling arthritis in Hillary Clinton's hands getting worse and worse? And will she simply send a body double to all future events to prevent us from doing analysis like this on her behavior? Well, only time will tell. So how did we get here? How did we get to this point in America? Well, I hate to bring in another game to illustrate how it could have happened, but I must. The game is billiards. And it can be an easy game or an impossible game. And that depends on how good you are. It depends on how you play. So we'll throw in a little billiards metaphor here. You see, when you are playing good in billiards, all the shots are easy and it's smooth sailing. On the flip side, when you are playing bad in billiards, you end up snookered and you have no clear shot. In some cases, you have no shot at all. And that brings us to where we're at today. And sadly, that leads us to our present predicament. Like I said, these actors are not the brightest stars in the sky. They outsourced all our factories. And because they outsourced they sent all our factories to China. And who bankrolled those? Believe it or not, It was the banking cartel, a global banking cartel, led by the Federal Reserve banking cartel, which financed all those factories in China. So as our factories were shut down, our illustrious leaders and our bankers bankrolled China's factories, which has led us to a position where the banks had to create a housing bubble with the help of Congress and the politicians. And they created a housing bubble which busted. And then they had to push a button and literally give themselves trillions of dollars of new, freshly printed fake money to keep the doors open. Not worrying about us, of course. So they printed all the money up. The banks kept their doors open. And to even make matters worse, they manipulated the interest rates down to zero. And now you understand what I'm talking about, the metaphor of billiards. When you're playing badly, you get snookered. And that's where we're at today. They played extremely badly. Our leaders in America played so badly that we are now snookered so badly that we have no shot, we have no factories, we have no middle class, and we wonder what the envelope was about. And to add insult to injury, after destroying our country, they have the audacity to give Donald Trump the evil eye, the stink eye, side-eyeing Donald Trump. They think they're going to pin it all on him, the non-career politician, the outsider. They think that they're going to raise interest rates and they're going to blame it all on Trump. Will they get away with it? I don't know at this point in time. All I know is if they keep on raising interest rates, Donald Trump will look like a buffoon. And maybe that's what I thought their plan was from the beginning. But then I see Donald Trump leaning over and giving them the stare. And I could not help but notice all the comments on the last video where people were saying Donald Trump was leaning forward and it was a sign that he was stressed out. I didn't see that. I didn't see any elevated signs of stress in his posture. I frankly saw Donald Trump trying to send Hillary Clinton a message through eye contact. And we've already established what that was in the last video. You take me down, I'll take you down. That's what I see in this stare. Donald Trump is sending her a message. We all know that back before the election, Hillary had some sort of grand plan that she was going to go up against the reality TV star and she was going to easily beat him. We all know that there was a possibility of an agreement, a handshake deal between Hillary and Trump that, she could easily beat him and she would be the president. Many people think that Donald Trump is playing 4 and 5D chess, and he reneged on the deal and he said, hey, I'm not going to lose to you, Hillary. I'm going to be the president. And this is all speculation. But I'll tell you what's not speculation, and that is the Clinton Foundation investigation, which is just in its infancy stages. And we're talking about an investigation that can be ramped up or it can be shut down on a moment's notice. So when Trump leans forward and tries to give Hillary Clinton some eye contact, give her a warning, is this Trump's way of saying, I'm going all in, Hillary? I believe that when Donald Trump leaned forward and he looked at Hillary, that was Donald Trump saying, I'm all in. And I'm going to tell you for a fact, there's no way in hell the Clintons are going to call this all-in bet. That's not speculation. So the game is getting interesting. It's not over yet by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, is Donald Trump overplaying his hand? All I know is this. Normally the people who are with the bankers win. And how do the bankers do business? Well, the bankers, all they have to do is push a button. And they can create $1 trillion out of thin air. But they also use the intelligence community to play out their games. So what we'll do here is I'll throw a bone to all the Trump QAnon supporters, all the Trump supporters, the QAnon freaks. I'll throw you a bone. And now let's speculate and theorize on the mysterious envelope. Could the card have, what could the card have said? Let's have a little fun for a moment. This is what the QAnon people would, have dreams about at night. They open up that card and it says JFK on it. Okay. Or it says the Clinton Foundation investigation. Or what they really have wet dreams about is when they opened up the envelope, it had a big, large, black Q on there. A big black Q on there for QAnon. And that would be for like practical jokes purposes. Okay, I'm just throwing in a little bit of fun there. We all know that it was an encoded message. We know that there's only two groups of people who work together who could send that message to such a high-profile place. Again, we've talked about it, the 666 gang or the military security complex. They sent them this message. And it's time to wind this video down. It's been a combination of opinion, theory, speculation, and connecting the dots of the writing on the wall. As we said before, they're acting strong now when they're possibly weak. They are actors. And the banking cartel put all these actors in place. And I'm here to tell you these actors are not all that smart. I tell you, they're not smart enough to understand the Machiavellian games of the bankers, which leads us to this sorry public display of ignorance. I will repeat it, because that was the most commented thing on our last video. People were wondering, why are they laughing and carrying on at a European Caucasian American funeral? I mean, this was not New Orleans, and this was not Jesse Jackson laying in the coffin. So I repeat that this is what has led us to this sorry public display of ignorance. That these people they're not the brightest star in the sky. They didn't realize when they were sending our factories to China that they were going to destroy America. Or maybe they did. Maybe they did understand. Yeah, maybe they're just downright evil. And they knew what they were doing all along when they gutted the American middle class, when they shut down our factories, when they printed up fake money and gave it to the bankers and expected us to get on our hands and knees and beg for the breadcrumbs and the snap cards. Maybe they knew exactly what they were doing. Breaking America, busting America, bringing us down to our knees. You take your pick. Either they're ignorant bastards or they're just downright evil. I tell you, it's not a good pick. Thanks to the bankers manipulating and pushing interest rates down to zero to save their own asses. And let's never forget the words of Bush Jr. back when the housing bubble bust in 2008. Jr. said, "I know how distasteful this is. It's distasteful, but we must hand over all this money to the bankers so they can keep their doors open." That's what George Bush Jr. said. The sorry thing is, they could care less if you or I keep our doors open. Pathetic. Part 3 of the Bush-Clinton mysterious envelope saga. My metaphor today is crime families. My goal is to analyze the similarities between the Appalachian Mafia Don's fiasco up in upstate New York back in 1957 when they were caught red-handed, and the deep state Bush Sr. funeral while all the heads of the crime family assembled. All of this was in full public display. And quite frankly, it looked bad. But we are not here to rehash those glorious moments where they showed their true colors. No, we've already done that. Like I said, this is part 3 in the saga. So how are we going to start this out? I think we will start this conversation off with what are the people thinking? You see, I read all the comments on the two videos in part one, part two. I do read the comments. And I get the feeling that when Donald Trump walked into the funeral, the Americans felt like the boss had arrived, like a mafia boss had walked in and he was going to show these fools who was in charge. And I mean, this was the overwhelming thought pattern that I was getting from the comments. So, did Trump expose this criminal cartel at the Bush funeral? I mean, did Donald Trump plan this out? I mean, with the envelopes and everything? And we'll start this conversation with my opinion. And this is my opinion because I make videos. Not only do I make videos on political commentary, but I make other videos. And sometimes I make silly little short films. And I understand how hard it is to catch that moment. It's difficult. So, in a time like this, in this funeral fiasco, I go back to what Orson Welles said. And nobody can deny that Orson Welles was one of the greatest filmmakers of all times. And do you know what Orson Welles said? He said this. He said, the greatest things in movies are divine accidents. Let that sink in for a moment. Divine accidents. This is from the man who has created some of the greatest movies ever created, Orson Welles. Quite frankly, a genius. He was a magician. That's what movies are, illusions. So I really think, when I think about this funeral moment, and this is a big moment in America, I don't want anybody to downplay this moment in time, because I am here to tell you this is one of those divine accidents on film. Maybe a divine accident in American history. And if you have the patience, I will dig deeper today and I will tell you why I think this footage is so important in American history. And no, it's not because some deep state operative with CIA connections went to meet his master in hell. No, the implications of this moment in time have nothing to do with a funeral. We're talking about criminal heads of state assembled in the public domain on full display for the unwashed masses to form opinions, to verify what they already know. Remember, nobody can teach you anything that you don't already know. I mean, how's that for old Greek philosophy? So, was this the moment that America figured out that these people are mafia dons, leaders of a criminal organization? That's what I got from the comments. Now remember, people have known this for a long time, but there has to be that moment, there has to be that special moment. And I'll call this that divine accident where they helped us out. And we got it on film. And people, not only in America, but folks all over the world, were able to see this gross display of uncouth arrogance where mafia dons fight for control of territory right in front of our eyes. I mean, Shakespeare would be peeing in his pants right now if he saw this. I mean, imagine what Shakespeare would think if he was able to watch this. So let's get back to my goal. Remember my original goal? To see the similarities. What do you mean? What the similarities? Okay, like mafia dons all assemble in upstate New York. You got that picture in your head? All these mafia dons. Okay, now get this picture. Deep state dons assembled at a deep state funeral. I mean, what is the biggest threat to a criminal enterprise? That is for all the dons to assemble in one place and get caught. Okay, let's make sure we have similarity one down pat. Okay, think of it. Mafia dons assemble to laugh, drink, and divvy up the loot. Seriously, I mean, that's what mafia people do. They charge a vigorish. All that vigorish and all that juice money adds up, and the dons have to split it up, divvy up the loot, and they all have to be in agreement. Now switch from the left part of your brain to the right part of your brain and picture this. Deep state mafia dons assemble to laugh, cackle, and rub the loot right in our damn faces. Caught in the act on film in full public display. So again, it's one thing for us to have a gut feeling that we know what's going on behind the curtain. But then you go to a totally different level. You go into a totally new, different level when you get a visual confirming what your gut has already told you. Okay, let's go into similarity number 2. Mafia dons running in fear. You have to imagine, a lot of people don't know what happened up there in Appalachian, New York, when you had all these criminal mafia dons assembled in one place. They got caught. I think it was the New York Highway Patrol got suspicious, and and all these mafia dons were running out of the house. I think they were surrounded by a few state troopers, and they definitely did not want to get caught, all assembled in one place. So they all started running. Most of them, a lot of them got caught and arrested. So you got that picture in your mind. The dons are caught. And there's a little bit of fear going on there. I mean, these are hardcore criminals, but they still have a little bit of fear. Okay, now again, switching from the inner part of your caveman brain to the frontal lobe, picture this. Deep state dons froze in fear. So, do you see any similarities between the heads of the organization here? They got the mysterious envelope, and the heads of the mafia families who got caught by the New York State Troopers. You see any similarities here? Because I certainly do. But let me make a special comment here before we get to the third and the most important similarity of all. Remember that. This third similarity that we're working up to, it is the most important of the whole picture. But I do have to make this special comment because it's not lost on me that I may be playing right into the hands of the people who think that Donald Trump got elected and was put in a position of power by a direct divine intervention by God himself. That they think that Trump is God's personal sheriff who will arrest the deep state organization. I got to make a statement here. That's not what I mean by a divine accident. The divine accident I'm talking about is like what Orson Welles mentioned, that when you're filming things, sometimes you think you're filming something, but not until later, when you're doing the editing, do you find out that that was a divine accident. You didn't really plan on this. I don't think anybody really planned on showcasing this criminal organization all assembled in one location, and for us to analyze their emotions, their body language. I don't think anybody truly put this together or planned this. I mean, just like up there in upstate New York, I don't think that the FBI and the state troopers planned to catch the mafia dons. The mafia dons just made a mistake. They had all those fancy cars on the coming rolling into a town, and the state troopers got suspicious. I mean, what the hell's all these fancy cars coming into our? So they started to investigate. So when I talk about divine accidents, they're not planned out. Of course, in my opinion, they're not planned out. Well, we've made it to similarity number 3, and if you've made it this far, congratulations, because the scientists out there tell me that modern day humans have the attention span of a goldfish, and sometimes I wonder. So similarity number 3 is the most important. It ties all the dots together. You've got to remember back in 1957, when they caught all those mafia dons in one place, assembled. Why was that so important? A lot of the younger people any younger generation watching this video up to this point are probably confused. I mean, what was so important about that meeting? Well, up until that point, that divine accident that was caught not only in photography, but was documented in the newspapers, it was of national interest. Up until that point, guess what the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover tried to throw down the American people's throats? J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI refused to admit the existence of a nationwide criminal conspiracy, a nationwide criminal organization that went all the way from New York to Las Vegas to California, down to the tip of Florida, all the way down to Cuba, over to Italy. We're not only talking nationwide criminal organization, we're talking a worldwide criminal organization. And J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI denied the existence of this organization, which most Americans had already had a gut feeling existed when they went to any of their local illegal casinos, and when the bombs went off on certain cars in certain neighborhoods. I mean, most Americans already knew it, but it took a special occasion, a divine accident, where all the mafia dons came together in the public domain, and there it was, caught in full public display. Now, in this similarity, you don't even need the electrons to travel through your brain. I mean, it's no doubt that you realize today that the FBI refuses to admit a deep state 666 gang exists. I mean, how many times has that question been thrown to James Comey? Back when Comey was the head of the FBI, I remember him addressing this question all the time. Comey would say, "Oh, I know there's lots of people out there who say there's a deep state. Well, I just don't see it." See the similarities here? I mean, this deep state thing didn't come up till recently. Before Comey, no head of the FBI even had to address the question. But this deep state thing that's rolling through America today, it's so prevalent, it's so out there, that tells you something there, that James Comey had to come out and say, no, we don't see any evidence that a deep state even exists. Now you got to go back to 1950s when J. Edgar Hoover said, "Oh no, there's no nationwide conspiracy of mafia. No, it doesn't happen. No, it's not going on." They denied it back then, and they deny it today until a divine accident magically comes up, and they can no longer deny it. And that's why I say that you cannot downplay this moment in time. The American people have a visual here. It was confirmed to me in the part 1 and part 2 of this series. Oh, almost 1 million people watched this, and their buttons were pushed. Yes, they had many, many comments, and they were excited to see that the deep state was worried, that the deep state was in fear. We got a visual here. That this visual is confirming to the American people that there was some kind of organization, and they are in fear now, just like back in 1957 when it was confirmed to the American people. Yes, there is a criminal organization nationwide, and no matter what the FBI said back then, now we're on a whole new level. And of course, after that, the FBI had to admit it. My question today is, now that the people are awoken, is the FBI going to admit that there is a deep state, a secret organization that is not elected? They live in the shadows, and they pull the strings, and they divvy up the loot. I think that's what really pisses off the American people. how the Obamas and the Clintons and all these people who are supposed to be public servants, but somehow have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, live in $1 million homes. I mean, but you're not supposed to talk about it. And you're not supposed to research them. And if you're the neighbor, if you live next door to these public servants in these $1 million mansions, you have to keep your mouth shut. The bottom line is Americans are not stupid. The Clintons never had a real job in their life. The Obamas never had a real job in their entire life, and yet they're millionaires. I mean, if that's not the evidence of a criminal organization, I mean, why is it that the Clinton Crime Foundation is not being investigated? Or more specifically, why did it take so long for there to be a real investigation? And is that investigation really going on like they tell us? Sometimes I wonder if it's just not all smoke and mirrors. They tell us that there's a bunch of whistleblowers from the Clinton Foundation, and there's over 6,000 pages of evidence, and they tell us there's an ongoing investigation which will probably last until Hillary's well into her 90s. I mean, that's how long old man Bush lasted. Bush lasted into his 90s, and there was no investigation into Bush Sr. So that might be some good news that at least there's a somewhat of an investigation, even if it's a fake investigation going on into the Clinton Foundation, which brings me up to another interesting point. How big is this organization? We're talking about the deep state mafiosi. I mean, how many dons are there in that organization? And not only capos, but how about captains and soldiers? I mean, there in 1957, in upstate New York, there was over 100 mafiosi that attended the meeting from the United States, Italy, and Cuba. And I don't care if you say Appalachian or Appalachian, or I don't care how you say it, because the Cuban mafiosi in attendance, I think they called it the Siberian Hicksville. But I've mentioned that because everybody says, it's not Appalachian, it's Appalachian. And where the hell are you from, bravo, blah, blah, I get that all the time. But let's bring up some of the names of the Dons in these families. I mean, you're talking about the Genoveses, the Gambinos, the Bravos, the Corleones. You had Big Paul Castellano. You had Don Carlo Gambino. You had Santo Trafficante Jr. there. You had Don Vito Genovese. I mean, you had all these Dons. I mean, today, the names have changed, but human nature, greed never does. I mean, now you have the Clinton crime family and the Bush crime family. Only the names have changed. Like I said, the greed will always be there because that's why they sell us down the river. For personal gain, money, power, and greed. And then you had old Frank Costello. Yeah, he was a doozy. You might be surprised to know this. I think I only did maybe one book report in my entire career in public schools. And you know who I did that book report on? Yeah, Frank Costello. I found a book on him. And that was my book report I did in, I think it was maybe junior high or high school, on Frank Costello. So my profiling of these criminals go way, way back, if that tells you anything. What do you got here? You got Fat Tony Salerno. And of course, Fat Tony was represented by Roy Cohn. We might get into him later. Fat Tony Salerno in the middle there. He also, well, he had communications with Steve Wynn. Now, we're talking about casinos now. So it's no coincidence that Fat Tony Salerno had communications with Steve Wynn, or maybe were they orders to Steve Wynn. And Donald Trump was in the casino business. And Roy Cohn is the handler. Well, not to change the subject, but talking about handlers, I think it was lucky for Hillary Clinton that her dad did not have a vowel on the end of his last name, and he was not invited to the big meeting up there, upstate New York in 1957. He had to stay in Chicago and do the grunt work. Yeah, you're talking about the capos, the captains, and the grunts, the soldiers. We're talking about an organization here, aren't we? And back in the 50s and 60s, who was the lawyer, handler for these wise guys? None other than Roy Cohn. And I mean, not to be sarcastic or anything, but all you QAnon researchers out there who connect the dots. I mean, I hear you Bible thumpers are pretty good at reading the writing on the wall, if you know where that came from. I mean, why don't we do a little bit of profiling into their MO, their SOP, standard operating procedure of the 666 gang? They study the demographics of America. They study the unwashed masses because we are the commodity. We are the product, not only to be sold, but to be sold to. So the elite 666 gang who control all the money and all the important assets, they must analyze our comments and our views to understand what to sell to you. Put simply, what will we buy? The people, the unwashed masses, what will we accept as they throw it down our throat? They think that they have to analyze this, the 666 gang. What will the people accept? I mean, it was easy to buy Donald Trump, wasn't it? When the alternative was the crooked, sleazy Clintons. The Clinton Crime Foundation. Who in the hell wants the Clinton Crime Foundation to steal any more loot from the American people? Nobody wanted that. So the American people gambled on a racehorse with no previous races. I mean, we're talking about an unknown commodity here, a non-career politician. And many people think that maybe I've been rambling for a few minutes. But no, I'm trying to get to a point here. You can believe, and you can believe with your entire soul, that the 666 gang is very confused now. I did not say they're out of control. No, whoever prints the money is in control, but they're confused. So I was not rambling about the 666 gang studying demographics, studying us. This video, the last two videos I made on this subject, part 1, part 2, all those comments, we've been through this before. It's very, very important for the 666 gang to analyze the comments, analyze our views, because they need to know what to sell us. They need to know what we will accept, what we will buy. Of course, we're talking a political horse race here. I mean, the races never end. Pretty soon it'll be 2020. There'll be another race. There'll be another race. What horse will they buy? I'm not talking the big one. I'm not talking about the one for the Oval Office. I mean, how many smaller ones are there? Smaller races. What horse will they buy? And they have to market that horse to you through the corporate mainstream media. And the field is muddy right now. It's a muddy, muddy field, and it's not easy to handicap. So, again, remember what we're talking about, the 666 gang. We're going way, way above these people you see in the pictures now. Way above the capos. Way above the political heads. And the 666 gang, they are looking for non-career politicians to put in the race because the long shot Trump won. And now the 666 gang has to readjust their handicapping skills to find a shill or a horse to sell to the Americans. Think like that new guy down in Texas who almost beat Cruz. Think, what's her name? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. New horses. Non-career politicians. Yes, it is true that we have witnessed a divine accident. And thank you, Orson Welles, for teaching us. That's what makes great movies. That's what makes great films. So just to make it clear here, the Mafia Dons are not in charge. The 666 gang who can print money out of thin air are in charge. Just to make it clear here, the politicians are not in charge. The 666 gang is. And the Federal Reserve banking cartel is a tool. Nothing more than a tool. And the craftsmen who own that tool, again, they are the 666 gang. They own everything. They have all the money. They own all the important assets. Back after the dot-com bubble collapsed, trillions of dollars left America. Yes, that was part of the dot-com collapse. The first bubble that bust, trillions of dollars left America, went over to Asia. And I'm not going to go into the story of why the housing bubble was blew up, but I must make it perfectly clear who's in charge here. And it's not you or I. But nevertheless, you and I may not be in charge, but 350 million Americans cannot be ignored. Just like back in 1957 when they were up there in upstate New York, divvying up all the stolen loot. I will end this conversation like I have ended many, many times before. Some of you may even remember this. What do the American people want? I tell you that the American people want half of the stolen loot back. That's all we want, is half of the stolen loot. And we will then let you have free passage to wherever. You fill in the blanks. But you will give back to the American people at least, and I say at least, half of the stolen loot that you have stolen. And even Roy Cohn would think that's a good business deal. Here he is in his last photo. Well, I have to add a little more to the closing because I realize most Americans want all the stolen loot back plus justice. That's what they said in the comments. But that is just not possible. A lot of the stolen loot is invested in Asia, and I don't see the Chinese cooperating. And plus, any businessman would say, scratch back whatever you can. Now, on the free passage, this is nothing more than what happened in 1865. They got over it, and eventually they moved on. In our case, we're going to scratch back as much money as we can, and then move on. Of course, we'll never forget. Now, we went over many analogies in this series. We've talked about poker, billiards, 5D chess, gambling, horse race, handicapping, boxing, MMA, mafia dons. But of course, the biggest metaphor was the envelope, the divine envelope. Well, it's been quite a ride, hasn't it? These clowns really know how to put on a good show. Well, I'll leave you with a comment that one of the commenters stated in jest. Can hardly wait for the next funeral.